At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Learn more at asuonline.asu.edu.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. My name is Justin, and it has been quite some time since I've last came on here and held a podcast. Um, and the only thing that I can explain about that is that changes happened, and I had to take more of a behind the scenes role, and that led this channel from being a sports podcast to a gaming or sports gaming, um, to allow me to continue to provide content for this channel and help hopefully one day grow this channel for success. And over this past year, we got a chance to create content for NFL Madden, MLB The Show, and WWE 2K Universe Mode. And what I've seen in content creations and in growing and the experience I've had so far in publishing gaming content, I've been more than satisfied with the outcome. So I appreciate everyone's support. I appreciate everyone's, uh, you know, value into taking time to watch this content that I provide. Um, and hopefully it continues to grow. That's what I would like to see. Over the past few weeks, I was approached by a friend of mine to host a project that would allow me to conduct a series of interviews that I could publish to social media, on top of them being able to publish to social media, for an event that's coming up in the upcoming weeks. I intend later this week to create a video that explains into depth what the project is, um, as well as being able to start publishing the first sets of interviews that are being conducted. And with this project has had me have to create a subscription on a platform that allowed me to record video and streaming content. Now, from day one, I've always been a fan of StreamYard Studios. I've had that, to start this channel, and I would love nothing more but to go back to StreamYard Studios. But unfortunately, with the economy these days and the inflation of prices that have scattered across the entire world, I had to settle with a different subscription, which leads me over here to Zoom. This is the Zoom studio that we are recording off of. And as I grow with Zoom and record several videos, I'll learn the ins and outs of what Zoom has to offer and provide. It was actually a friend of mine who has used Zoom for his own podcast that has continued, that's used Zoom from since day one, and has probably given me the most influence to stick with Zoom, other than its can't beat prices at the moment. So, um, this is a working progress. Not only, trying to get back into the editing of podcasts, the conversation pieces, the putting the pieces together in post production, um, any working off any rust that I may have here that you'll probably see in the first several episodes. So I appreciate your patience. I apologize for the inconvenience and the lack of professionalism. If you guys know me, You guys know that I like to give the best product I could possibly provide, and I don't settle for anything less. So, um, we'll just see how this goes. And, I don't know the future of podcasting. And this is something that I would love to do. This is something that I would love to carry on with me over, you know, moving forward along with the gaming content I am providing. But I don't have that crystal ball. I don't know what, finances look like, 2, 3 months down the road. I don't know what household, activities look like 2, 3 years down the road, or even months or weeks. So there is an uncertainty. But while I have the subscription, while I'm working on this project, and while I have the time to proceed with this opportunity, trust me, I'm going to take advantage of the most of it all. Now, what's going to be different is that I'm not doing this every day. I know, from doing a video 5 days a week on a set schedule, a set time, um, that's something that I'm not doing. Unfortunately, I got to adapt and change to the time, right? And to the changes and availabilities I have. Um, but like I said, things change, and as we change with them, as we grow, like I said, I once again appreciate the support that you guys carry to follow this channel as we grow on. So talking about what we're going to really do on this channel, and in this particular video, this is a sports channel. I understand that I put on gaming content, and hell, I even put on some other content that's not gaming related. Had no idea what. I was just trying to maybe, hey, how can I expand my broad of viewerships? Um, but this primary channel is gaming channel, and everything that we kind of publish, we want to relate it back to gaming if possible, or interviewing podcast wise. It doesn't have to be games, but we try to do our best to focus on gaming, or sports related. So did mention the content that I've been creating for the past year, NFL Madden, MLB The Show, and WWE 2K Universe mode. That is something that if you guys wish to leave me a comment down in the comment section, but we can come back on here and do a podcast kind of explaining that into depth. So we'll see. Maybe that is a topic to come by. But I have some ideas over the next few weeks of what I maybe want to come on here and cover. Obviously, we just got out of the baseball MLB's All Star game last week. We had Saturday night main event last week, leading up to SummerSlam coming up here in just a few weeks. NFL is about to get underway again with preseason football. And, if you are a sports fan, I will say this every time, every year, this time of year, if you are a sports fan, this is kind of the time to get involved. I mean, soccer, you have the G League, you have basketball off season. I mean, there's plenty of sports to go around. And I will do my best to cover news, stories, hot topics during these episodes, baseball, football, wrestling news, etc., to the best of my ability. I feel like I strongly fit in the category of football conversations and baseball conversations and wrestling conversations. So that's where I'm going to focus on. But doesn't mean that I'm not going to throw in a basketball conversation here and there. And, this is the one thing that kind of happens when you've been out of it for quite some time. You may feel like you've fallen off the edge of the earth when it comes down to knowledge in the sports world. I was kind of browsing cbssports.com earlier today, and I was kind of just checking up on stories that was lurking around, the sports world. So, and some of the stories we're going to have a little brief discussion about. I kind of want to cover some of the top ones that attracted my attention. There's a few conversations in professional wrestling that I do have also that I would like to share my thoughts and opinion on. And look, kind of just a reiteration. This is a channel where I'll share some news. I will share my take on something. It may not be something you agree with. It may not be something that you support, and that's okay. I encourage those to have conversations. If you want to, like I said, leave a comment down in the chat on the next video. I could bring it up if it's worthy enough. Um, and I encourage you to do so. I like to interact. If someone wants to potentially have that conversation with me with these sports, let me know and I'll reach out to you. So, um, but this is just my opinion and my take. It may not be right. It may not be wrong. I may not be the first person who said it. I'm not going to take someone else's opinion for mine. I may agree with them or disagree. Reading off the articles or news, I'm not taking any credibility, and I'll do my best to share credibility from where I get these resources. Um, but I'm just here to talk some sports, give you pick my brain out, and give you my thoughts on some of these things. So in today's episode, I do want to focus. There's two there's about to three stories in professional wrestling I want to cover. I do want to talk just briefly on Seth Rollins' injury that happened back on Saturday Night Main Event a little over a week ago, as well as Goldberg's retirement match. And then there's a few stories beyond wrestling that I kind of just I found interested, so I'm gonna pull them from CBS Sports, and I could read you the article, and we could have just a brief conversation about. So nothing too major, just a few topics or headlines I like to go over here. Um, so I think that I like to maybe do this appropriately, and give our congratulations to take a moment to reflect on Goldberg's successful career. And I'll kind of do some backstory to Goldberg's retirement match, and this is just to fill in for those who are unfamiliar with Goldberg's backstory. But um, in recent years, Goldberg returned to finish a feud with Brock Lesnar in the WWE, and since then, he's won a few championships. He's kind of had this on and off run where he kind of has given back to the company and filling in, name slots, whenever it's been asked. Um, and I guess there was a promise made by WWE. Not going to go into details with specifically who, but the WWE alone. And they promised Goldberg a retirement match. And I think, since then, you had the pandemic. Um, you've had a lot of things, WWE trying to get out of that rut under new ownership, and they're trying to grow again, and there just really hasn't been a need or a space for a guy like Goldberg. And let's not forget he's well in his 50s, and I give anybody credit who can compete at the level um, that they're supposed to at the age of 50. We're going to read a story here later on about a pitcher who is returning back to the major leagues at the age of 45. And I just think those are incredible moments. So In a nutshell, in earlier this year, Gunther, who is currently your world heavyweight champion, has mocked, disrespected, made fun of Goldberg and his family. And if you know anything anything about Goldberg, you know he is a family man. He's a man's man, okay, and he will not back down from a challenge, or he will not allow anyone to disrespect him or his name or his family. And right after Gunther beat Jey Uso in Saudi Arabia or some, in what, in the last PLE before Saturday Night Main Event, Goldberg comes out and basically says you're next, and they go on to have this match at Saturday Night Main Event in Goldberg's hometown, Atlanta, Georgia, and Goldberg does not win this match. He gets basically knocked out. He doesn't tap out. Gets gets put into a chokehold, and the referee stops the match. So Gunther, wins the match. He has this world heavyweight championship, and Goldberg gets to share this moment now where he didn't necessarily win, so he didn't walk out on top, but he didn't necessarily lose via pinfall or submission or countout. This is the cleanest way you could possibly make this storyline to come to an end. Um, and he goes on, his friends, family are in the ring. He says a few words thanking the WWE Universe, his friends, family for making all this possible. And if you're watching this on television or on Peacock, it gets cut off right then and there. Probably about 30, 45 seconds into it. I've seen nothing on social media but just hot takes about this, how WWE once again disrespected the legacy of Goldberg. Um, and I think that's a statement that, I've heard Goldberg not a big fan of that, and I agree with him. I just don't know. First of all, I don't know. I have not yet read or heard any stories from WWE on what happened, from Peacock on what happened and why it happened, if it was planned or not. So until you kind of hear that second side of the story, it's hard to make that opinion. I think a lot of people will feel sympathetic to Goldberg's point of view. And I agree. I definitely, if this is your hometown, this is your final performance, you're not lacing them up in at least in the WWE. Um, I would argue that, if you wanted a little bit more time, you had a little bit more time. And I don't know why you didn't have more time, considering that Seth Rollins got hurt and that match had to get cut short. I thought the match was great. I thought it was simple. It reflected what Goldberg could do in the ring. It kept things clean. Um, and you just had that match that really felt that was, standard enough for these two men and what they're capable of doing. I didn't have a problem with Goldberg retiring. I didn't have a problem with Goldberg, having this match. I didn't have a problem with it being a main event of the night. My and I didn't even have the problem with the story leading up to Goldberg's return to challenge Gunther. My concern was, or my issues with it was the build up leading for on the other side of the party leading up to this match. Because there you had Gunther post WrestleMania, who lost the Intercontinental Championship to Sami Zayn. Then he kind of goes on this downhill spiral over the next few months, losing matches. Um, he goes on to just he's struggling. He's a guy who is struggling to, how do I best put this? I want to stand corrected. So, and I did, let me do correct myself. This was good. Earlier this year was, it all started when Gunther lost his heavyweight championship to Jey Uso. And I apologize for the misunderstanding on that. But he goes on this downhill spiral since then. He goes and kind of, he's losing matches. He's not seeming to be able to get back into the swing of things. He starts questioning himself. He starts doubting himself. He starts um, losing his momentum, losing his confidence. And then out of nowhere, when a lot of people was moved one direction, and the direction was Jey Uso was going to beat Gunther to retain the title. There you have Gunther coming back and winning the World Heavyweight Championship. And now you have this champion taking on Goldberg. Now, I don't know about you, but Gunther in my eyes has, he's at the top of the level. He's earned my respect. What he was capable of doing over the last 2-3 years has really caught my attention. I consider him as one of these top guys in the industry. He's up there with the Roman Reigns. He's up there with the Seth Rollins. He's up there with the John Cenas and the CM Punks of WWE. But I noticed that a lot of things were happening where it felt like Gunther was hitting rock bottom. And out of nowhere, they pulled that back from him and put the title back on him. And if this was just me, maybe, and I don't know, maybe there was something that, a reason why they had to put Gunther back as champion. I didn't feel like it did anything for the Goldberg and Gunther match. But I felt like if there was a different way to proceed with this, I would have kept Gunther going downhill, hitting rock bottom. I would continue having him doubt himself and lose his confidence, lose his edge. But then he meets Goldberg, this guy who's been dominant throughout his career. And then I would, this victory, come this match, I'd have Gunther win the way he did. And this restores Gunther's credibility. Gunther could then use a victory over Goldberg to build his confidence, to start back up, go into SummerSlam and take that World Heavyweight Championship back. It's not just another defeat on a resume anymore at this point. It's that up and downhill battle where you got everything taken away from you. You got nothing else to fight for. You're all alone, right? You're in this mist. No one's pulling you out of it. You got to find and dig deep to find a way to get out of it. And here's a hand in Goldberg, this guy who's dominant. He's a staple, a win over Goldberg, sabotaging, and playing spoiler to a retirement match in his hometown, just does just enough to get you back up, going up that hill. And then you could go on and have this successful run. So I don't know if it was, there was a reason, what the reason was, and I am interested in learning about that reason of why they put the title back on Gunther, instead of waiting out this long. But I'm not debating whether or not it was a good match. Both men delivered. Definitely a makeup from the last time I remembered Goldberg in the ring. And the last time I remember Goldberg in the ring was when he had a terrible match with The Undertaker. So I'm glad that he gets to have this, that he had this final match, um, and he was able to hold his own. Um, and it goes to a legacy. I consider Goldberg as one of the original WCW's wrestlers who, if you had to ask me who was on my Mount Rushmore of WCW, he'd go up there, including names like Booker T and, Sting and so on. So, um, I hope Goldberg is satisfied with his career. I hope he's satisfied with where he's at. He, and he gets to ride off into that sunset with the peace of mind. And so we wish Goldberg a very, very happy retirement. And who knows, maybe his son one day becomes a professional wrestler. Um, but man, you think about a Goldberg career, a guy who started off in a different sport, jumped into wrestling because he got hurt, and the rest was history. He was a simple man, came in, did his job, went home. A lot of people was encouraged to be just like him, and you could never repeat a guy like Goldberg, no matter how much any other wrestling promotions or even WWE tried to. You just couldn't compete against a guy like Goldberg. So, I wish him the best of recovery. While we are on professional wrestling, Saturday night main event, excuse me. And while we are on, you know, these conversations, I guess let's just talk about Seth Rollins' injury. Man, deja vu. Haven't we seen this before? And I hope it is not, his injury is not an extent to keep him out longer than expected. You know, injuries happen, and I think this is a proof. If someone would argue with you, hey, wrestling is fake. That's always the number one conversation, right? Wrestling is not real. Well, you know, there's no double takes, and injuries like this do happen. And I guess, you saw it on Saturday night main event. Seth Rollins gets hurt during his match against LA Knight, and LA Knight had to cut it short and hit his finisher and pinned him, and we move on. And I think this is, there is the question of what does the future hold right now, because Seth Rollins is at the top of the WWE. Excuse me. Some will even call him the face. Uh, he's leading the Oracle to success. He has the Money in the Bank briefcase. Braun, he's under, he has Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed under the realm of him. And so if this injury is to take him out 4, 5, 6 months, even to a year, you know, this can set a lot of things back. Now, here's the thing with Seth Rollins. He's already credible. He already has a fan base. This is one of the established wrestlers on the roster where if he leaves for any extended period of time and he comes back, whether it's a heel or it's a face, he's going to, the roof is going to explode. Okay, so he's well established. I'm not worried about Seth. And I think the only question that I would even figure to ask is, you kind of do have to ask yourself how, is this the time that it's time for me to retire? And after seeing guys like Goldberg, go through his retirement match, and John Cena is going through his, retirement tour, I'm sure Seth Rollins is going to battle and fight and make a comeback because he's going to want to retire under his own terms. So the question, it's not about Seth Rollins. And as a matter of fact, I'm not even worried about the Money in the Bank briefcase because you can see, he has an entire year to cash that in. If he's going to be out 5, 6 months, he could come back at WrestleMania and make a return and cash it in. They could have him come back, successfully cash it in, and then drop it the next night. There's so many other type of storylines you can create about this. um, that you could sit on it for a while. You don't have to make any irrational decisions on how to maneuver around it. But my question goes towards the other two members of the group. Paul Heyman's a wise man. I'm not worried about him. They could throw him in with anything. You know, hell, Roman Reigns is supposed to return back to Raw and address the, WWE universe and Paul Heyman. And maybe that goes somewhere. But I'm worried about Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed. And more so Bronson Reed than anything else. Because you talk about a Seth Rollins injury that, like I just mentioned, Bronson Reed is a different type of person that I personally have not been able to figure out. He's not your average build. Um, when they tried to build him up, and he unfortunately got hurt, took him out for quite some time. And you didn't really get that explosive reaction when he returned, and I think that's due to the lack of, credibility that he was built up towards. There's less information I know about Bronson Reed, and therefore it concerns me about how much you can do with him as a character and for his size. And I'm not being judgmental. I don't, I'm just not convinced. I'm not bought. I'm not portrayed from Bronson Reed quite yet. And when you threw him into this faction, all right, now he has something and someone to lean against, to grow and to become successful. Braun Breaker, I'm not worried about. He had a massive run in NXT. He's come up and has had a great run in WWE so far, winning championships. He is, in my opinion, a future world champion when the time is right. He's even, in my opinion, someone who can take Gunther to that next level when the time is right. And so I'm not worried about Braun Breaker. He's already set in stone. I'm worried about Bronson Reed. And so, as I wish Seth Rollins a speedy recovery, I do just sit here with a little bit of hesitation. And, what's going to happen with this faction? Because you have two choices. You could run with it. And if you're going to run with it, I'd figure that after you get Seth Rollins established and maybe he has his surgery, 2 or 3 months later, you keep Paul by his side, and then he kind of does some behind the scenes camera work with them. And then, he slowly comes down to the ring as he recovers, and he has to have an appearance. Seth Rollins has to have a an aura over this faction while he's gone, unless someone gets brought into this group like Roman Reigns or anyone that could benefit. But I do question, or you can start splitting everyone up and have them go their own ways, and this was a fail. But I'm interested to see how this goes. But first things first, we want to wish Seth Rollins a speedy recovery. I'm going to get into some of the stories that I have came across with. And these stories, the first one was a wrestling story that I saw. This one's going to be from Yahoo.com, internet and articles, and was specifically about Roman Reigns. Now, this one here was written by, and I'm going to butcher the name, so I apologize, by Ohas Kulkarini. I apologize if that's a complete butcher to his name, but it was credible to know where to find the resource from. And this is just a rumor. Roman Reigns has kind of been on a shallow appearance here lately. A lot of people will call it a hiatus from the WWE since losing at WrestleMania in the triple threat match. And one of the biggest rumors speculated about this, about Roman Reigns' absence, is that this was the time for him to welcome in another child. And so, I mean, it definitely gravitated my attention. It is always a possibility. You take some leave of absence for deaths and newborn, coming into this world. But then, possibly, Roman Reigns and his family and how big these families can get. And so this article brought up, I read it because the article was titled Roman Reigns addresses rumors he had another child during WWE hiatus. And so I'm reading this article. I'll just share some of the information with you. Roman Reigns is married. For people who don't know, his wife's name is Galena Becker. Like I said, I apologize if I mispronounce any names. They got married back in December of 14 and have had 5 children together. A daughter born in 2008 and 2 sets of twins. And it was to believe the rumor was that he was written off TV to welcome in another child. But he was interviewed after he came back last week. But these rumors were put to rest. Roman Reigns addresses the rumors on TikTok, and he made it clear that the rumors weren't true. And he said he's done having kids. Roman Reigns is done having kids. He goes on and states, 5 and done. And I quote, they're trying to say I'm trying to catch up to Jacob Fatu, this is something I'm learning too, who has 7 kids. Jacob Fatu recently came into the WWE, well established, has 7 kids. Roman Reigns, 5 and done. I'm done my job. I've procreated. He goes on, and I quote, when's it going to be about me? Damn kids, end quote. He's like, can't go nowhere. People asking me about how's vacation. There's no such thing as a vacation, right? School from August to June. Then you have to tour. Then he makes it clear, don't feel bad about me or any of that. And the reason I'm sharing that is I can relate. And when I say I can relate is I can relate to Roman Reigns and a family. And matter of fact, I can't envision. Talked about Seth Rollins getting hurt, and his family with Becky Lynch being a wrestler and having a family, I think is beyond crazy. I always, I don't think people value or even, care to understand that, if you're a local wrestler, you could have a family, you probably have a job, you're taking care of your business. This is kind of that, side thing you do on this, on your own free time, a hobby, so to speak. You're in AEW, you're in WWE, and they've done their best to give them more time off, but you grow, you have a family, you have, you're not, if you live in Pensacola, Florida, and you have to travel for work, you have a choice to keep your kids at home, keep them away. This isn't the same, just like baseball, just like football. Difference is that there's a lot more. I feel that there's a lot more traveling back and forth. You show up on a Monday Night Raw, go home Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, got to fly back out for Friday, Saturday, maybe come home Sunday, back out again. And so these schedules are still grinding. And when you have a family on top of it, it is a whole nother ball field to tackle. So I do understand, and I do feel, when it comes time to, if you have a family, and I mean, there's things that I struggle with, and, I got 3 kids, and, and I stay here. I don't travel like a lot of these guys do. So I feel for it. And I just thought, because I can connect on a, father to father perspective, about his stories and his rumors that come along. So I just wanted to share with that. All right, so got 4 more stories for you, and then I'll be done for today's episode. But one of the stories here, we'll talk some football. And this football article is going to be from CBS Sports, written by John Breach. And it's between the Cincinnati Bengals and their first round pick, Shemar Stewart. As negotiations still continue, it seems to be challenging. So I want to go ahead and just kind of read a little bit into this article, and then we'll kind of cover the bases with it all. The first round of the 2025 NFL draft took place 88 days ago, and somehow in that time, the Cincinnati Bengals have failed to work out a deal with their top pick, Shemar Stewart. A pass rusher from Texas A&M is the only remaining first rounder. Key importance to understand about this, who still's unsigned, and if Monday was an indication, the drama might not be ending anytime soon between Stewart and the Bengals. Team held a local media day Monday where the owner, Mike Brown, meets with the media. And, they're still uncertain where he stands. It doesn't seem like they're in a good place. And it's this is how kind of the breakdown is. So with rookie contracts now slotted, both sides know that Stewart will be signing a 4-year deal. He'll be making $18,969,276 in his contract once the deal gets done. And it's not about the money. That's set in stone. It's not negotiable. It's all about the language of the contract. And Brown sounded slightly irritated that Stewart's camp won't agree to the Bengals' offering. So when we talk about this contract now, we're kind of diving into the configurations, the guarantees of the contracts. So this language that they're talking about involves the voiding of future guarantees. If Stewart were to get suspended or arrested during the 4 years, and these are, typical, the Bengals would void the guarantees. If you go out there, you're telling me, the Bengals are telling Shemar, within your contract, you're a rookie. You're going to be considered a rookie for the first 4 years of your contract. You're here to play. If you're going to go out there and party, you're going to drink, you're going to do X, Y, and Z, and you're going to stay out late, fine, go do that. I can't control you as a human being. But if you get in trouble out there on the streets and you cannot play and the NFL suspends you or you get arrested, then this contract, we're not paying you that full 18 million because we're not paying you to go get hurt or to go get, go out there and, go to clubs and parties and this and that and get arrested and spill and spin and chill. I mean, you got to keep your head on your shoulders. So this is kind of a protection. Hey, you want this money, which I know you do. You have great, I think you have a good sense of mind. You have a good head on your shoulders. You're a good human being. Take this as the encouragement to get yourself together, settle down, figure out, what your admirations are, and, follow, this path. Brown says it. He doesn't want to be paying a player who's in jail, and I wouldn't. I don't want to pay anybody who's in jail. His agent wants it to be so that if he act in a terrible fashion, that is all hypothetical, of course, something that rises to the level of going to prison, that he would be on the line for the guarantees of the future years that haven't been played. The Bengals' position is no. If that happens, we're not going to be paying them. And I think that's a reasonable understanding. If you're Shemar Stewart and you're his agent and you're trying to battle a contract that basically says, look, you know, we want to guarantee that if something would happen, my first question is why are we even at this point? Why are the Bengals even like? I feel like it's not silliness, it's stupidness. Because now, I mean, if I'm Mike Brown, I'm questioning why did we even draft you if you're sitting here raising a hissy fit over our contracts and the details in the fine print saying that if you just can't, if you can't be a good boy, then we're not going to pay you. How hard is it? I mean, are you telling me that your interest is not as invested in the football than it is at a party drinking? Is there something that we don't know about that can land you in jail over the next 4 years? Why is even prison a factor? You're playing football. What does jail and prison have to do with playing in football? What are you doing outside of football that would land you in jail? And why is that even a concern? Are you, a dealer on the outside? Yeah, I'm a football player by day, a dealer at night. What are you doing? And so I think this is a whole bunch of crap that doesn't need to be evolved into anything more. And you just sign that contract. And I think if it goes on, if you're the Bengals, I don't want this player who values the safety net of going to jail. I don't know what would cause you to go to jail. You would have to commit pretty heinous crimes to go to jail. And if you're that type of person, then I don't want you on the team. I was kind of suspicious about Joe Mixon playing the season after he got arrested, earlier in January. And then he goes on and plays the season for the Bengals. And I'm just like, you have a guy who's up to no good. And I get it. You sign him to a deal and you're trying to honor that deal. And I give commends to the Bengals for trying to do their best to honor that deal. But I question Shemar and, why, what is the reasoning? Does he even want to play football? Because if you're telling me, maybe after, I don't know what the taxes look like here and all this, but if you're telling me for $18 million, all I got to do is stay locked up in a house for 4 years and play football, which I've worked my entire life to get to, then what is that? I do that in a heartbeat. And I feel like majority of the people who listens to this would think the same way. Maybe after the 4 years, I mean, there's other things to negotiate, maybe it's injuries. I would negotiate injuries. If I get hurt my rookie year, I would like to have guaranteed money the next 4 years, or at least some sort of compensation, depending how long this injury takes, because this is a value of my, what we signed up for. I negotiate that. I read this article. I just found it kind of bizarre. Like I said, there's other things you can negotiate for guarantees, but when it comes down to conversations about, oh, well, if he's in prison or if he's in jail, that's not a negotiation. No team would want you if you're they're going to take that big risk of signing you and then eating up that contract. If I'm any other football team owner, Shemar Stewart, I don't care how good he is. He's not playing for my team as long as I'm ownership, because I do not have the room or time. That is not a conversation you should hold. I don't, if you're going to bring up, oh, well, what is my guarantees if I'm going to be in jail? So what are you doing to put yourself in jail? And I don't need that publicity. And I'm definitely not going to pay you any X, Y, and Z dollar amount if you're going to abandon this team for your personal life that way. I don't know. It's just a story A part of that I wanted to make sure I shared in today's conversation. Continuing on the football conversations, the Titans, this is also on CBSSports.com, will back us earlier today. Article named Titans Will Levis will undergo shoulder surgery and miss 2025 season as the number one pick, Cameron Ward, becomes the starter. Man, this is kind of tricky. Tennessee Titans kind of in a position where they can, hey, any team can make a run this year. So can the Titans. They're kind of trying to rebuild and solidify their season. Now, Will Levis. I am butchering names today. Uh, he's going out. He's going to make that decision. Hey, I need shoulder surgery. I'm going to miss this season. He was the second round pick of the 2023 draft. And this is a huge risk that Will's going to need. I understand he needs this surgery. Okay. And getting it, you don't know what the outcome is going to happen. He could get, may not be the same quarterback as he was before, or he may be a better quarterback. We are uncertain about that. But with the risk factor is not just about returning from injury. It's about how well can Cameron Ward come out and impress the Titans this season. You're giving a rookie quarterback, an opportunity to make a name for himself, and he could potentially, depending on his performance, depending on how Will Levis comes back, Cameron could be that forefront for the Titans moving forward. And Will is, like I said, taking that risk where he may not be that future quarterback for the Titans. The Titans, in a statement, said that we support the decision and focus on long-term health. He approached the offseason with professionalism and showed clear growth as a leader. We remain confident in a full recovery. And you know what? First and foremost, we are a channel that we support, and we wish the best on everybody who has to go through some sort of adversity. Will Levis is going through an adversity. This is a big big halt on his career. And it's kind of one of those situations where you see another number one ranked quarterback, Cameron Ward, comes in. He was going to probably be competing with him throughout the season. Will probably, unless he was putting up, terrible numbers, he was probably going to be starting majority of the season. He's deciding, hey, I need to take care of something for long-term health, and we all agree with that. But in the outcome is that, another football moves on, and the Titans want to win a Super Bowl, and Cameron's going to come into that slot, and he's going to do what he can. And who knows? Like you said, you take advantage of that opportunity. I mean, you see Tom Brady. One of his successful stories is taking advantage of the opportunity that was presented for him. So, but Levis started 9 games for the Titans as a rookie in 2023, 12 games last season. He was injured with an AC joint in his throwing shoulder while diving for a first down on September 30th, a game against the Miami Dolphins, and re-aggravated it in injury after returning to action in Week 6 against the Indianapolis Colts. Will is 6'4", 229 pounds. He missed 3 games and then was benched after Week 15 loss against the Cincinnati Bengals. In his 12 starts, he compiled a 2-10 record while throwing 2,091 yards, 13 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. He also rushed for 183 yards. So maybe a season to forget. Maybe I encourage you to throw it. It is something that, excuse me, you got to ask yourself, with the record that you had last year, which is probably a season to forget. It's an AC joint in his throwing shoulder. It's going to always re-aggravate him through and through. So it is, it is probably time. Listen, if I never come back to the NFL because of this surgery, it's not the end of the world. Give this time early, young, and done. instead of being outcast. But if you want to save any part of any future career moving forward, getting the surgery done, having those high hopes that it's a successful recovery, hopefully that we can work out and redeem yourself as Italians. And if not, it may be something different for another team that may need you at the time. So, we're here. We want to wish Will Levis a speedy recovery. Don't rush it. You have the entire season. I think that you also sit back and get a chance to support, Cameron Ward, who's going to be tackling on a huge test and a huge challenge moving ahead. All right, we're going to move this along here, and two more stories I have for you guys today. A little bit of an NBA, as Chris Paul will return to the Clippers in NBA free agency. CP3 is back in LA for his 21st season in the NBA. Paul did play from 2011 to 2017 with the Clippers. This article is written by Sam Quinn. And I just see the name Chris Paul and the Clippers, a name that I'm familiar with. This according to ESPN. Decision to bring Paul back to the franchise, with which he played arguably the best basketball of his career. Paul spent 6 seasons with the Clippers, making 5 all NBA teams and 6 all defensive teams in the process. It's a 1-year deal worth $3.6 million for Paul. This is per NBA insider Chris Hines, who's added a 2025-2026 NBA season, which will be Paul's 21st season in the league, will likely be Paul's final one. In the summer of 2017, however, the first stint with the Clippers ended when he forced a trade to the Houston Rockets so he could compete for a championship alongside James Harden. Now, ironically, Paul will join Harden in a team for the second time as a Clippers trade for Harden earlier in 2023 and 24 season. So it's kind of coming back to a circle. I do remember watching Chris Paul, kind of a big fan of his. Always would want him on my team. And, he play. I do agree. He probably did play the best basketball of his career with the Clippers. Gets a comeback, kind of that right off into the sunset, play 1 year with the Clippers. I'd say see how it don't be confirmed until after the season ends, but you play 1 year, you see how the numbers looked, you see how if the team can benefit from. But I say Clippers are your home until the end of time. So hopefully another season goes well for Chris Paul. All right, last but not least, this was the big one I was talking about. We talk about age here. Goldberg being in his 50s, still competing in his retirement. Rich Hill returns to major leagues for a record 14th team. Will be the oldest active MLB player when he makes his Royals debut. Hill will be the oldest pitcher to appear in an MLB game since Jamie Moyer at the age of 49 in 2012. This was written in an article on CBSSports.com by Mike Excisa. Excuse me. He's a left-handed pitcher. Rick Hill is back for the big leagues again. The Kansas City Royals are calling him up, who has been with their AAA affiliate in Omaha. Prior to Monday's series opener with the Chicago Cubs at Wrigley Field, reports fans cited the team has not yet announced the roster move. Hill could pitch as soon as Tuesday, as Kansas City scheduled to starter is officially listed as TBA, with Michael Lorenzo recently being placed on the injured list. Once he appears in a game with the Royals, Hill will tie Edwin Jackson major league record by playing his 14th different team. Hill began his major league career in 2005 with the Cubs, the team he could face this week. Wow. His career has taken him from the Cubs to the Orioles, to the Red Sox, to the Cleveland Guardians, to the Angels, to the Yankees, Red Sox again, Athletics, Dodgers, Twins, Rays, Mets, Red Sox again, the Pirates, to the Padres, and now to the possibly to the Royals. Rich Hill has pitched for the Red Sox, has came back to the Red Sox 4 times throughout his career. Hill is 45, signed a minor league contract with the Royals back on May 14th. Currently has a 5.36 ERA in 9 starts with the AAA club. Through the Pacific Coast League is very hitter-friendly league. Plus, those games were something of spring training for Hill. On July 13th, Hill struck out 10 batters in 5 innings, becoming the first 45-year-old to strike out 10 batters in a professional game since Nolan Ryan in 1992. Throwing out some big names in there. 45 years, 132 days old on Monday. He will be the oldest player to appear in Major League in the MLB game since 45-year-old Ichiro Suzuki in 2019. The oldest pitcher to appear in an MLB game since the ageless Jamie Hoyer pitched until age 49 in 2012. He will also become the oldest player in Royals history. That distinction currently belongs to the Hall of Famer Gaylord Perry, who was 45 years old and 6 days old when he started for the Kansas City Royals on September 21st, 1983. That was his final game. That was the final game of Perry's career. Hill will be the 7th 40th something to appear in a major league game this season, joining guys like Max Scherzer, who's 40, Justin Turner, who's also 40, Jesse Chavez, 41, Yuli Guerrero, 41, Charlie Morton, 41, and Justin Verlander at 42. In Hill's last season, Hill appeared in 4 games with the Boston and allowed 2 runs and 2/3 of relief innings. He pitched a full season in the recently as 2023 when he had a 5.1 ERA in 27 starts and 5 relief appearances for the Pirates and Padres. Hill has a 90-74 record with a 4.01 ERA in 20 big league seasons. He spent time in the independent league in 2015 before receiving a career with the Red Sox. And this is why I'm going to call it so important here. You saw that, you heard of that record, 90-74. If I'm Hill, this is coming up next season, well into what, 20 years, 21 years, yeah, in the major leagues. I would arguably say if you could go for 100-win season career, that's a milestone. If you can, come back and just pitch out another season, you don't see many guys out there these days, older veterans that are just lingering around. Yeah, you got a few and selective few, but you really have had to do something right in your career. And Hill's definitely been up and down. Rich Hill's been hurt. He's had his fair share, but he's one of those elements of not backing down. He's not going anywhere. And when this all said and done, we'll look back on his career. I just, that history of 14 teams among a 20-year career for Rich Hill. So hopefully that comes true. But that will kind of wrap up our little sports talk conversation. I know it's a little bit new of a dynamic period. I want to appreciate everyone. Don't forget to hit those likes, share, and subscribes. We are well over 1,000. And since the last time I've gotten a chance to speak to you guys on a podcast where I think we're under 100. So definitely has grown thanks to the gaming channel. Still expect to see a lot of the gaming channel ahead of us. And like I said, WWE 2K Universe mode, which is a weekly, 4 or 5 shows a week, depending on what's going on. You have Madden, MLB The Show continuing. We just got past the All-Star game. Let's not forget about NFL Madden as the preseason off, is about to begin here in just next Thursday, July 31st with the Hall of Fame game. So um, we got a lot of sport, a lot of things going on both on the gaming side and in sports. So if I have the opportunity to come back and talk more sports with you guys, then I would love to do that. Appreciate your guys' support. I will give you guys information on the project that I am working on, hopefully later on this week. Like I said, it's going to include some fun things. Like I said, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, until our next episode, thank you guys for joining, and you guys have a wonderful day.